I recently lost 3 days of my life thinking I was being self aware. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was staying with some discomfort, but I wasn't. I was actually abandoning myself. And I almost pushed away something that really mattered. Maybe you'll see yourself in this. Stay with me to find out. Welcome to the See It Be It podcast, a place to come home to yourself, to see yourself more clearly, so you can be yourself more intentionally. I'm your host, Kirsten McKinnon, and today I want to share what we have to lose when we abandon ourselves. In my case, I recently lost 3 days I can't get back. 3 days of thinking I was being self-aware, but I wasn't, and I was actually abandoning myself. In a previous episode, I talked about staying with yourself when fear gets activated. This episode explores something different. What happens when we think we're doing that, but we're actually not. And I want to talk about this because this is not obvious when you're in it. In fact, it can feel like the exact opposite. It can feel like you're doing the right thing. So here's what happened. I was navigating a relationship with someone I care about, and I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to be thoughtful and considerate and self-aware. And I was also tired, emotionally open, a bit stretched too thin, just dealing with a lot in various areas of my life. And in that state, I made a decision to step back and create some space. A decision that at the time felt like strength. It felt like I'm being resilient. I'm handling this well. I'm staying with discomfort. But I wasn't. I thought I was staying with discomfort, but I was actually staying with a story I hadn't checked out. And that's the distinction that changed everything for me. The story I was telling myself started with something like, oh, I might be too much, or I should step back, or I might be adding pressure here, or this could overwhelm them. And this can sound different for everyone. Like for you, maybe it sounds something like I shouldn't say anything, or I shouldn't go for that opportunity, or I should just wait. But here's the thing. None of that in my story had actually been confirmed, and there was very little real data to support it. But it felt true. And because it felt true, I treated it like it was true. And once I did that, everything started to build from there. I changed how I communicated in a way that didn't actually feel like me. I usually communicate in a certain way, more thoughtful, more open, but I overrode that. I even deferred to external advice about how I should communicate in this kind of situation, instead of trusting what I already knew about the relationship. And I think a lot of us do this. We look outside of ourselves for clarity when we've already lost connection to what we know. And in a world that constantly offers us advice from other people, from online content, from AI, it can actually take us even further away from ourselves if we're not grounded in what we already know. And that was the first moment I left myself. And from there, things escalated. I reached out to someone else for support when I wasn't grounded, instead of checking in directly with the person involved. And the response I received from outside support made sense, given what I was sharing, but it also reflected and amplified the assumptions I hadn't checked out yet. And when you share an untested story, well, we tend to get it reflected back to us. And so now I had my story newly reinforced. And from there, it just spiraled. I started seeing red flags everywhere. I started questioning everything. I started constructing a reality that felt completely real, but wasn't grounded at all in reality. And this is the part that's really important. When you are burnt out, under-resourced, tired, emotional, stretched too thin, your mind will try to create certainty, even if it has to make it up. So what felt like clarity was actually self-protection. And the cost of that was real. I lost 3 days. 3 days of clarity, of energy, of focus, a lot of emotional pain, a lot of unnecessary suffering. And honestly, I almost pushed something away that was really meaningful to me, all while believing that I was doing the right thing. So here's the distinction I want to offer. Not all discomfort is truth, and not all strength is self-leadership. Sometimes what feels like resilience is actually putting up walls of self-protection. And sometimes what feels like self-awareness is actually just a really well-constructed story. And this doesn't just show up in relationships or friendships. It shows up in career decisions, in opportunities we don't take, in ideas we don't share at work, in moments where something doesn't feel right, but we move forward anyway. So what do we do with that? Well, there are a few things I'm taking out of this that may be helpful. The first is to ask, what do I actually know for sure? And what am I assuming? Those questions alone can interrupt a lot. The second question is, do I feel like myself right now? Or am I more analytical or performative or withdrawn or disconnected than I feel when I'm feeling like myself? Because for me, one of the biggest signs is definitely when I stop feeling like myself. And the third is to ask, is this something to sit with, or is this something I need to check out with the other person or about the situation or context? Because this is where I got off track. I thought the right thing to do was to sit with it, to not act, but to just process within. But what I actually needed to do was check something out in reality. And that's a very different move. One of the ways I can always tell that I've left myself is through my body. For me, some of the signs are like I know I'm experiencing pressure if my jaw is tight or hurts. And fear for me shows up often in my stomach. Sadness tends to sit in my throat and my chest. And when I'm disconnected from my body and all those signs and I'm in my head alone, I can spin for days. But when I come back into my body, I can see the situation, the reality much more clearly. And one of the things that came out of this is that I can take really beautiful things and turn them into pressure. Things that actually matter to me, things that bring me joy, connection, creativity, possibility. And I can turn them into something heavy, like something I have to manage or something I have to get right. And I don't want to do that anymore. But the only way I can see when I'm doing it is to slow down enough to notice, to get still enough to see what's actually happening here. Not the story, not the assumptions, but what's real. And this is exactly the kind of moment that I care about helping other people with. Because it's not obvious when you're in it. It looks like being thoughtful, being strong, or being self-aware. But underneath that might be self-abandonment. You might be leaving yourself. And the goal isn't just to sit with discomfort, it's to stay connected to yourself while you do. And if you're anything like me, this is really hard to catch in the moment. And that's exactly the type of thing we'll be working with in my upcoming workshop. Not just understanding this, but practicing how to catch these moments while they're happening, because that's where things can start to change. So if any of this resonates for you, just start simple. Notice, what am I actually feeling? What do I actually know for sure? And where might I be filling in the rest? And then take it from there. I'll see you in the next episode.